There are a few lessons that I want to share about the story of Hannah. Number one of the lessons is that we can love, we can offer love, we can offer support, we can offer prayer, but in the long run, the person is going to have to find their answer in the Lord. You know, Elkanah is there to support, to help her go through it. But, it is Hannah. She's the one who is working towards getting herself out of this problem. So, at times our family members are going through problems, our relatives and friends, and we want to believe that we want to assume that we are the ones who can fix their problems. So we are reminded that you cannot be a fix-it-all. You cannot fix it all for people. At times they just have to go through it by themselves, and eventually they find the answer to their problems. The second lesson I get from this reading is that even in our most desperate and painful situations, we must trust in the Lord. Even in our most desperate, those painful, that unanswered prayer that you keep on praying year in, every AWM meeting, every other time we have prayers and it is not answered, those painful situations that we go through, we must just trust in the Lord. The Bible tells us that even if you have faith as little as that of the mustard seed, you can tell the mountain to move from here and throw itself into the sea. So we just have to trust in the Lord. Persistently trusting in the Lord. And what as Christians, I and maybe other Christians will fault a little bit is that consistency in trusting in the Lord. You can trust today, you trust tomorrow. When it is not happening, you start doubting, you pull backwards, why is it not happening? But we are reminded that to consistently trust in the Lord, because he is in control, because he's the one who is in control. He's the one who closed Hannah's womb, and he has the answer to Hannah's problem, which he eventually sorts out. Number 3, we must learn to find comfort in prayer. We must learn, you be comfortable in prayer, knowing that somebody mightier, somebody up above is in control. Just as I said, when you're looking at the model of Hannah's prayer, it teaches us about 3 or 4 lessons. That when you go to the Lord in prayer, don't pretend, don't spice up or just try to pretend. Be you and offer your prayer just as you are. Offer an honest prayer, just as we've seen the way Hannah poured her heart out, honestly speaking or talking to the Lord. So that honesty and in prayer is very important, because eventually she gets to a point where she's now comfortable. She finds peace after giving out, offering her prayer, after speaking out her heart. Then again, the same prayer I've just mentioned before, that do not pretend, just be who you are. Offer your prayer passionately or fervently to the Lord, persistently to the Lord. And eventually you humble yourself. As we've seen, she mentions herself as a humble servant. As your servant, if you give me a son as a servant, then she vows to take the son back to the Lord, to serve him. Another lesson I learned from this is prayer changes everything. Hannah is changed through prayer. She eventually, after all the suffering, she gets to a space where she's peaceful. She changes. It brings change in her life. So even in our lives, if we persistently, honestly, continuously pray to the Lord, definitely we will see change. And as I've mentioned before, like when we are dealing with issues, when we are going through problems, it is important to share, to identify that one somebody. Like in the space we live right now, by the way, when you, like for example, in a work setup, when you share, maybe if you're going through some hard issues in family or just outside family, at times, human beings, we rejoice in hearing people's problems. I don't know whether it is rejoicing or you will find that whatever you shared with somebody, it is with the other person, like the whole place knows what you shared with that one person. But I'm saying it is important for us to share whatever we are going through with that person that you trust, with those people that you trust. But you realize if you take it to the Lord in prayer, if you speak to the Lord, and as we've said, without pretending, just bring the problem just as it is to the Lord, then of course the Lord knows, and eventually He will get to you and answer the prayer. Another thing I learned from the story of Hannah is that God's plan is bigger than yours, than mine. God's plan is bigger. He does things. He chooses to do things because He has a reason. He has a purpose for that. He allows us to go through situations because He has a reason to us why He allows that to happen. So if you have that bigger picture, then in the process you might not really complain, because Hannah was in a space whereby she was able to choose to complain. Why me? She could have made all those complaints you can imagine about, but she chooses silence. She chooses silence, and instead of just competing with her co-wife, with Penina, she chooses to take it to the Lord in prayer. So God's plans are bigger than we can imagine. When He allows us to go through something, it is for a reason that He allows that to happen. And eventually, my topic was God accomplishes His purpose through prayer. God fulfilled His great purpose. We've seen that God has fulfilled His purpose through Hannah. A prophet has been born through her, who is going to bring great transformation in Israel. So God fulfills His greater purpose. So we are reminded to keep on praying. Don't give up. If there is that one thing or two things or three things you're trusting in the Lord for Him to do for you, let us honestly, persistently continue praying with that. And we are also reminded from Hannah that let us not be selfish. When God has given us that which we've been praying for, let us not be selfish. Let us also remember to go back to the Lord, maybe depending on the agreement you made with the Lord, then be able to give back, to give thanks. You can give thanks to the Lord in so very many ways. We are also reminded that consistency is very important in the service of the Lord. And just as I've mentioned, consistency, this is where the challenge comes. I tell myself that I want to be waking up every morning at 5 so that I read through the scriptures, I prepare for the Sabbath school preparations. But, I do that for 1 week, second week, then third week you sleep off. So if we can be able to just be consistent with the Lord in everything that we do, in serving the Lord, consistency in serving the Lord. Because God uses our trials to bless us. God has used Hannah's case to bring her blessing and the whole of Israel to be a blessing. So God uses our trials to be able to bless us. Let me have my kiongozi, you can read for us James chapter 4 verse 3. James 4:3. 4 and 3. Yes. you ask and you thank you. You ask and you not receive. So this is what I was talking about, praying in alignment with attaching some kingdom benefit, committing through a vow. By the way, I remember back in time when I was in high school, struggling with mathematics, sciences, and all those subjects. Some pastor came in and he preached to us. And he preached to us about attaching a kingdom benefit with your prayer, like striking a covenant with God. Then, he told us that you can ask the Lord to do this for you as you do that for him. By the way, I embraced this. It might appear like, a joke or something. I embraced this and I decided, this is what I was particular about, the grade I wanted to score in KCSE. Then I attached some benefit. I said, I will be giving 10% of all my savings or pocket money. Then, Lord, do this for my performance come KCSE grade. Then that is what came out. Honestly, that is what happened. And also my mother, since I cleared high school, that is since I was 18 years, my mother struggled with a lot of complications in her body. She had heart issues. She developed some condition that because we were young, we didn't get to understand. And of course, we lost our father I lost my dad long way when I was in class 5. So we never got to understand. She could, be unconscious, then she falls down. We thought maybe fatigue, she's been working and it is fatigue. And it took a long time for us to realize that it was a heart condition. And I'm telling you, it is God, because she stayed with that condition for so long. So by the time, we came to realize that this is not normal, this is a condition that requires, and of course, she will take her to hospital, then the doctors will just treat. The way doctors, wanapima tu, anarudi nyumbani. Wanapima, anarudi nyumbani. So imagine it is when we are old enough that we came to bring her to Nairobi. Then that is when it was discovered that she has some heart condition. And by the time it was being discovered, her days were numbered in this world. She was almost getting to the verge down there. So, and of course, we were able to organize here and there, and then we took her to India, and she was treated, and she's now okay. Yeah, we thank God for that. So her story, I've walked with her for long, and it was, I kept on praying for her. I kept on, in fact, this is when I now came to understand the vow, striking the covenant with the Lord for her. And I want to believe those are the prayers that sustained her for such a long time, by the way. After more than 15 years down the line, that is when you discover that that was the heart condition that you used to see. When you're going to school, she falls down. Then for all that time, we were in primary school all the way to when I'm working, I'm old enough working, that is when the condition was discovered and she was treated and she's okay. It was God. Because at some point when I was in campus now, I will pray for her every 3, I don't know what it is about praying at 3 p.m. and 3 a.m., but I will always rise up. Hata kama ni ya mchana 3 p.m., when I'm doing something, I'll go somewhere and just say a prayer for her. And I just want to believe, she's a testimony, by the way. She's a lady who can write a book to testify about her life because she's really gone through a lot. But all this, I look back and see the power of prayer in her life. It is through the prayers that we kept on offering to the Lord, sincerely, honestly offering to the Lord, and she answered. So I want to thank the Lord this morning for what we've been able to share. we are reminded that God answers prayers. He answers prayers for sure, and nothing is too hard for him. Let us persist. Let us keep on persisting in prayer, consistently, fervently praying earnest prayers before the Lord. And God is never too late. He's never too late. You know, no matter which level he answers your prayer, that is the right time for him. So he's never too late. And as I've mentioned, even in silence, God still hears and answers our prayers. So we don't have to shout, but you can as well do that if it is the way you used to communicate to the Lord, but even in silence. I want to believe there are those ones who here can testify that through their silent prayers, they have a testimony through their silent prayers. So even in silence, God answers prayers. Pour your soul to the Lord until you find peace. You know, pray until you find that peace. And of course, with faith and trust, God remembers us. I love that statement in the Bible. There's that section where when Abraham was up in the Mount of Moriah, God remembered him. Then as we read ahead, in 1 Samuel chapter 19, early the next morning they rose and worshipped before the Lord, and then went back to their home at Ramah. Elkanah made love to his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. I just love that statement. The Lord remembered her. So even us, in our situations, in our circumstances, at one point, the Lord will remember you. So don't give up, just persist. And it is through prayer that God gets to know what we want. And of course, he already knows what is good for us, but we have to keep on communing with him through prayer so that he accomplishes his purpose in our lives. That is what I had for us this morning. We rise up with song 121, the choristers. You sing for us Nyimbo za Kristo, song 121. Then we can have a session of individual prayer, just some few minutes for each and every one of us to talk to the Lord before we have a common prayer for all of us.
Dhambi katika 3 of katika wenye dhambi ndimi mkuu wao, ila Yesu akaja kwa dhambi alikufa, akamimina damu ni upate uzima. Ajabu pendo lake, pendo lililo kuu, pendo lisilo mwisho, lidumulo milele, lililonitafuta ingawa sikumpenda, ingawa ni mbaya, Kristo ni vyote kwangu, ajua haja zangu, huzuni zangu zake, hataka
So I want us to take a few minutes individually to go before the Lord in prayer. You can just find your space where you're comfortable. If you're comfortable standing, that's fine. Comfortable kneeling, that's fine. Sitting down, that is still okay. And just pour your heart out to the Lord. Then when we are done, we can have a common prayer.